والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. I begin in the name of Allah, the creator of the heavens and earth, bearing witness and testifying that there is no deity worthy of worship except one and only deity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I bear witness and testify that Muhammad is his slave, his servant, and his final messenger sent unto all of mankind. As we have been doing from the last 2 weeks, I want to continue the theme of demonstrating how we may have become misled in living our life, how we may have misled ourselves in not worshipping our Creator and instead falling into the trap of worshipping our desires or worshipping others besides God. So today I want to focus on why Islam, or the pure, sincere, willing and humble submission to the will of the Creator, is the only acceptable way of life, religion or ideology in the sight of God that you and I should all follow. So what are my reasons for inviting you to this call? I will put forward 3 arguments which demonstrates the truthfulness, the accuracy, the veracity of our claim. Why Islam, the submission and surrender of one's will to the one and only Creator, is the only acceptable way of life to God in the sight of a Creator. Many of you either don't believe in a Creator, or many of you are not even sure whether a Creator exists or not. You label yourself as agnostics. Many of you are Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Sikhs, Hindus, spiritualists. But what I would like to invite you on this call is to come with me to explore the 3 reasons why Islam has to be the only acceptable religion of God for you and for me to follow. At the end of my 3 examples and my 3 arguments, I will then take your questions and try to answer as best as I can. So you will have the opportunity. So in the meantime, I would advise you to listen to the arguments, because these arguments are central to the claim of Islam, that Islam indeed is the true religion. Islam is the only acceptable religion.
That's not on. Microphone. Not on.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Microphone's not on.
It's not on. She said not.
Don't turn it on. Don't turn it on. Thank you.
I didn't get it.
No turn on. She said no turn on.
Is it on or is it off? It's not a loudspeaker.
It's
not a loudspeaker.
It's not on the loudspeaker. Are you saying I have a loudspeaker?
Fine, we're just checking. As long as it's not on. It's not a loudspeaker.
It's not a loudspeaker, it's just a mic.
That's fine. Great.
All right. Thank you for demonstrating that I am loud enough for you to hear. Even without a loudspeaker, our police officers were able to hear me. Anyway, to continue, I would like you to understand these 3 arguments for the truth of Islam. But first of all, what is Islam? Isn't it worth for us to understand when we say Islam is a true religion, that we understand what Islam is, that we know the meaning of what Islam is? Because people often they are repulsed or averse by the fact that they think Islam is a religion of the Arabs. Islam is a religion that was there only for a certain group of people who would follow it culturally. What Islam is simply, my dear people, is this: It is a state of affairs of an individual self in which they submit and surrender their will freely, willingly to the will of their Creator, who is one and only. That state of being of oneself is the concept of Islam, where there is submission and surrender of one's will to the will of their Creator. And whosoever submits and surrenders their will to the will of their Creator is called a Muslim. Now, having understood the meaning of Islam and Muslims, why is it that we are claiming this is the only acceptable way of life, only acceptable religion, only acceptable ideology in the sight of God? Number one reason, Islam tells us to worship none but God. Since God, our Creator, is one and only, and our Creator requires of us to submit and surrender our will to this one Creator, this message is something that is universally understood and acceptable. It doesn't matter whether you are born in a Brazilian jungle 5,000 years ago. It doesn't matter if you are white or black, Chinese, Pakistani, Jamaican, rich, poor, whether you are fat or thin, man or woman. It doesn't matter. The message of Islam that you need to worship and submit and surrender to your Creator is universally attainable. Universally. By man, woman, and whatever variety of gender that you feel that you are in.
Islam's the right one out of all of the religions.
That is precisely the reason I'm giving you three arguments. So the number one point I'm saying, Islam is universally attainable, demonstrating
Islam is the right one.
demonstrating that this indeed is the religion of our Creator for mankind.
So if I create something that is universally acceptable, that can be considered the one true religion.
When I say there is a Creator, in the last 2 weeks that we talked about, and our Creator is one and only, and we demonstrated that our Creator cannot be more than one. That means any religion which goes against this concept, ideas of polytheism, dualism, tritheism, or triunitheism, or any other isms which talks about God is more than one, clearly is not telling you that it is truly from God acceptable for you to follow. Islam is the only religion which calls people to the worship of one and only God.
I'm sure there's probably another religion out there that does that.
Do you mind?
Monotheism. You're
Do you-
saying the only religion
Do you mind?
monotheism is Islam.
Do you mind explaining to me what other religion gives you the concept of God, one and only, the most high, the most perfect, which befits His Majesty?
This one that I'm just about to make up is called Flubbity Flubbly. Yes, it believes in one God and it believes in a principle of universal acceptance.
People in China, do they know about this God?
No, not yet. But when the message spreads there, they're going to accept it. They're going to accept the one true God, and I am going to try and say I have the true religion.
Sure. So once you do that, then come back. So let me continue then. Because you have not, as I said, a religion of God which invites people to the reality of worship of one God has to be universally attainable. Your religion, your concocted religion, your man-made religion has not reached even beyond the perimeters of Speaker's Corner. And yet you're so hopeful.
We're live feeding to the world.
Right. So once your religion is attainable, and tell me that yes, people know about this religion, come back.
No, that's the most
Number
easiest
two
thing in the
argument.
world. If people believe it, that makes it true.
Number two argument.
Hello, nonsense.
So the three arguments I was going to make. Number two, Islam gives falsification tests for its claims. You can falsify Islam
Have you got an example?
by applying those tests, and if it doesn't stand to scrutiny, if it doesn't hold up to this test, you know for sure that Islam is false.
Have you got an example?
So let me ask you,
No, have you got an example?
the name of a religion is what?
Something like flibbity, shibbity, flip.
So you've already forgotten the name of a religion. So imagine the religion that you think, stop there, 1 second.
I asked you a
Imagine the
question.
religion.
I asked you a question.
I am going to give my three arguments. I've given number one.
You already gave them.
So on my argument number two,
You already made them.
you as a heckler needs to understand is this. You don't even remember the name of a religion, and you expect people to accept it. So now, you've forgotten the name of a religion. What are the falsification tests of your religion?
No. Let's not put the cart before the horse. I asked you first of the examples in Islam of falsification.
Look, the reason I'm here on the ladder is precisely for that reason. Since you are interrupting my arguments as I was presenting them, I did say in the beginning that I will take questions when I have given my three arguments. But you kept on interrupting. That's why I'm engaging with you.
You've got everything you want.
So
You're
now,
happy.
I'm simply asking you, what are the falsification tests of your religion?
Sir, we've already done this before. It's your move. I asked you first.
So now, as you realize, you haven't got a clue what falsification tests you have for your religion because you have none. So a religion that you're going to propound,
Has your religion got any?
I'm sure I'm loud enough to tell you, and you've heard me, that I was presenting the falsification test, wasn't I?
I'm all ears. I'm all ears.
Right.
Something like shribbly, shribbly, hubbly.
He started again, he's forgotten.
Get your pencil and pen out, mate.
Right.
It's important. Right now.
Now, number one falsification test that is provided in the Quran. The Quran says, this book, the Quran that Allah has sent to his slave and servant, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Give us the reference, please.
If people are in doubt,
Give us the reference.
if people are in doubt as to what God has revealed to his servant,
Don't say God.
what you have
There
to
is
do
no God but Allah.
is simply this: produce
Your creed says there
a
is no
chapter
God but Allah. Call
like
him Allah.
unto the Quran.
God. Don't deceive his
You
people.
don't think it's possible
Surah
to write a
number
chapter
2.
like the Quran?
Surah
That's your falsification.
Al-Baqarah,
That's laughable.
chapter 2 of the Quran, which is called,
This is fun. It's fun to
my
talk
brother,
Islam.
my brother, please.
It's fun. Talking shit
Let
all
the-
time in the park.
Let the speaker handle the hecklers. Thank you. These hecklers are not new. They've come here before, and people will see what kind of heckling they do and whether they're successful.
So are
So,
these liars are new.
so chapter number 2 of the Quran called Surah Al-Baqarah.
They are the liars.
In Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 of the Quran, God gives a falsification test which people can apply and falsify the Quran if it was not from God. Amazing. You now have a religion which provides you of how to disprove it if it is false, and how to verify it if it is true. In science, those of you who are involved in science, in research methodologies, would immediately recognize falsification tests are important way of establishing our hypothesis, establishing what we are putting forward as our claim. That's what we do in science. So in the Quran, God, brother, please.
Don't
God,
say God, say Allah.
God
Say
tells
Allah.
us
There is no
what people have to do.
God but Allah.
وَإِن كُنتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا
Say God.
نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله
So you are going against
وادعوا
your creed.
شهداءكم من دون
You are
الله
against your Quran.
إن كنتم صادقين فإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي وقودها الناس والحجارة أعدت للكافرين. So I recited to you
Not
the ayah of the Quran in which the falsification test
people
occurs.
Don't understand Bhagwan language.
So the falsification test is this.
And let's talk.
Do you not have any
Do you
sense
have
of,
any sense of talking?
Why don't you say?
brother,
Do you have any sense of talking?
brother, excuse me,
Do you
brother,
have any sense of talking?
my friend, brother,
Do
listen.
you have any sense of talking?
As I said, and everyone listened, once I have put forth my arguments, I will open the floor to questions. Brother, my brother, come close to me.
Okay, I get you.
Right? We need to demonstrate and show patience. Patience is something that Allah wants us. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Allah tells us that it is important to demonstrate this tawasaw of patience and truth. So, as I mentioned earlier,
So Allah said,
once
"Kill Jews
I
and
have
Christians
given
wherever you find
the
them,
three
that's the
arguments,
patience you have.
I will open the floor
Quran has.
to the people
That's the patience Quran has.
to
Kill Jews and Christians
ask
wherever you find them.
questions
Surah 9 verse
or
9.
even engage
Surah
with
9 verse
the arguments that I've laid forward.
clearly says that kill Jews
My brother,
and Christians
where is your
wherever
patience?
you find them.
I am requesting all my Muslim brothers and sisters to do not engage with this heckler, because the
Oh,
heckler
you engage
already
with a liar.
is being demonstrated to be an individual who doesn't care
Who is
to engage in
by saying
a civilized
God.
manner.
There is
So-
God in the Quran. No.
So the
There is
argument that
God
I
in the
presented
Quran.
is
There
this.
Allah. And that Allah is a pagan.
One, if they are doubtful,
That Allah is pagan.
brother, subhanallah, patience. Now, this is a test for all our Muslim brothers and sisters. See how you can remain patient without engaging with the heckler, right? Jazakum Allah Khairan. So the argument of the Quran is this about the falsification test. If people are doubtful, like this heckler is, that the Quran is not from
Come
God,
to the people of the book.
what
If you are
what they have to do is quite
If
simple.
you Muslim are
They have
doubtful,
to
come to
produce
Bible.
a chapter
Come to
like
understanding.
the Quran.
We will
So
teach
we
you
are now
who
saying,
true God is. We
brother,
will teach you who
we
true
are now
God is.
saying,
the Muslims have wrong God,
our critics of Islam,
wrong Allah in factory.
have our critics of Islam,
Allah.
can you move away from my camera? Thank you very much. Have our
So
critics
my friend, you have a
come up with,
wrong Allah.
stay there, brother.
That's your God. Tell him, you tell him.
Have our critics managed to produce a chapter like in the Quran? They had more than 1400 years to do that.
Oh, chapter of the
So-
Quran is full of satanic verses.
So,
Quran is full of satanic verses.
then you should be able to imitate it, right? If you are able to imitate anything that what you say, why is it that you have failed
Satan brought
miserably to produce a chapter like unto the Quran? So now, history
let alone the human being,
testifies
let alone the
that
human being. Satan is the one.
the Quran
53,
claimed
Surah 53.
that the Quran is inimitable.
in the Quran. Surah
1440 something
It
years.
is the satanic verse.
And yet, people have realized it is beyond the capacity of humans and the jinns to produce something like the Quran, whether be whole of a book 10 chapters like it, or even a single chapter. So
Satan has brought that Quran.
Since
Satan has
the critics of Islam,
verses in the Quran.
instead of
And
bringing a chapter like Quran,
couldn't find out
they even went to wars and fight the Muslims.
why Allah is abrogating
Demonstrates
verses.
that it is beyond their capacity to
Why
produce
Allah
something
has
like it.
abrogate
So that was number one falsification test. Now we move to number two falsification test. The Quran says, لو كان فيهما. Continue and finish the verse. You haven't got a clue.
Why should I
Now,
be learning
The Quran says,
Bedouin language?
Bedouin language.
Bedouin
The Quran
language.
says,
Why should I be learning that? Whereas
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا
then far back,
لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. Had
pattern language,
the Quran, patient brother, had the Quran been from any other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have found therein many discrepancies,
yeah,
inconsistencies and contradictions.
even
For the last
there is a difference between
1,500
creation,
years,
different
Quran has been
days,
challenging
different
people
time, and different things.
to find
So Quran
examples
has a
of inconsistencies in the Quran.
Quran has a contradiction in that.
So now,
You are denying here.
having failed
Deceiving
again
people.
to bring any contradictions and inconsistency in a book spanning
Quran clearly says
over 23 years in its delivery,
forgot the
talking
creation.
about science,
Allah forgot the creation.
history,
In one chapter, Allah says,
talking about
Allah says,
human
the creation
nature,
was done
talking
on
about
earth, then heaven.
the events to happen in the future,
Allah says,
talking
heaven
about
first, then earth.
historical information, talking about economics, sociology, anthropology, biology.
Come on.
If a book
People
talks
saying
about
the Quran is the
all of
word
these
of
avenues
true
of
God. No,
human knowledge,
it can be
and yet
word of Satan.
it is
Yes.
internally coherent and
I
consistent
also believe that these are the words
without
of
any
God,
inconsistencies,
word of true God.
without any contradictions. So if a book which talks about science 1400 years ago, you would expect that book to make mistakes in science, wouldn't it? Because science 1400 years ago wasn't as developed as today. People thought the earth was flat.
Allah has no
People
proof.
thought many things. Like the Christians,
Allah
like the
says
heckler,
the woman
believes
has testicles.
the world is 6,000 years
Allah
old.
says the
But
woman
now
has
with the
testicles,
advent
their breasts are
of
testicles.
our knowledge
That is Allah saying.
in science and technology,
That is,
we know
that is what Allah
that
says.
this is not
The
true.
woman has
Our earth
testicles
is
of
more
his
than
breast.
6,000 years
That is Allah.
old.
Allah's
So when the Quran
science.
gives you information, now I'm going to give you
Allah be a true
two
God
examples
when Allah is saying
from
that
scientific phenomena
has a
for you to
sperm
reflect
is a
on
backbone and
how
a backbone of man.
this information could not have been
You
known,
being, you all men,
could not have been known to people back then. Brother,
do you have
do not
do you
interrupt
have
him.
backbone or
Right.
testes?
The two examples that I'm going to give, number one,
Backbone or testes?
the Quran says
Your Quran
in the
says
same
that your
chapter
backbone
that he's alluding
is
to,
testes.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim,
That your
والسماء والطارق,
Allah is completely
by the
wrong.
heavens
Allah
and
is
by this
completely wrong for
hammering sound, Tariq.
Allah says that
وما أدراك ما الطارق.
pool water.
What would you say what a tariq is?
That is wrong according to Quran and
النجم الثاقب This is a bright, piercing star. So At-Tariq, the Quran introduced 1400 years ago. Brother, please. Leave the heckler, thank you. Be patient.
You sit there.
This bright and piercing star called At-Tariq is described as something that's like hammering. Guess what? We know of stars today, and we've heard their sounds.
And those stars are
Their sounds we've heard was the sounds of hammering. Tick, 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 tick.
out from heaven.
This
Those stars
sound
are meant for that.
was impossible for a 14th century
So Allah
scientist
says
of that
that
time
those stars
to know
are
this.
hitting the Satan to
So
make it
this
there.
heckler should know very well
So your Allah is
information
saying in the
like
Quran,
this to
so
shatter his
Allah is
faith.
saying in the
Why?
Quran that
Because
you have-
such information we discovered only in today's
Allah is throwing
knowledge.
those stars to Satan.
this century. There are stars that we can listen to this kind of hammering sound.
Is that anyway science?
There was no
No, it's
technological
not.
tool
Science has
1400
against
years ago
So Allah
that can pick up the sounds and even know that those stars have this kind of sounds. That was my number one example. How the Quran gives you natural phenomena for you to think and reflect and bring some inconsistency within it. Number two example, the Quran describes in a very deep ocean, Bahrul Lujji, in a very deep sea ocean, not in shallow seas, not in seas which we, not that shallow. Within those seas, the Quran says,
So still he don't know
there are,
that sea is smaller than a sun. Sea is far
that there are,
smaller than a sun. He is even,
Thank you.
even Earth, my friend.
Thank you.
Earth is smaller than sun. Earth is smaller than sun. And he is saying that
I appreciate what you've just done. Thank you.
pool of water.
So now, the Quran says,
Come on,
the Quran talks about
sensible.
in very deep oceans,
Be sensible.
there are layers of darknesses, and at the end of that layer is total darkness. That's point number one. And the final point on this is that there are interoceanic waves within deep seas. We are not talking about surface waves. Those who have gone into the seas and oceans, you have gone into surfing. You know the waves. If you've gone to a beach, you have seen the waves of the seas coming to the shore. That's the surface wave. But perhaps you didn't realize that in deep oceans internally, further down the seas, there are these deep sea currents. They are like waves within the deep oceans. This you cannot see by simply diving, because there's a limitation of how much you can dive with human without any gear. We are talking about information in the Quran 1400 years ago and more. They did not have oxygen cylinders. You couldn't go beyond 100 meters or 200 meters, right? Because we know beyond, not even 20, 30, 40 meters, beyond 200 meters or so, if I'm not mistaken, is total darkness. The amount of pressure that builds up and so on. But even beneath this, there are these deep sea currents. Now, how did we know there are interoceanic waves? Through satellites. If you go up in the atmosphere with your satellite, you can see them. That is the technology that is required to see interoceanic waves. So when the Quran tells you to reflect on this book, if it wasn't from God, where is the Quran coming from with this information? So, these interoceanic waves is an example for you to reflect that this information is something that comes not from other than the creator of the heavens and the earth, as the book says so. So the argument number two that I presented of the falsification test was that you cannot find any inconsistencies. he brought up certain contradictions. Do you know why it is not possible to engage with him? If there was someone else other than this heckler, please, let him talk. Heckler, that's his job to heckle. If people have these kind of criticisms, I'm more than willing to engage with you, but only on a level of intellectual discussion, where we respect each other, hear each other, give time to each other to listen and understand our viewpoints.
No one else is.
And it is not possible.
Only this Muslim is the encyclopedia of this world.
Shall I give him the mic?
So,
Yes.
Do you want to come to my ladder? Come on.
Look at.
Go ahead. Get on my ladder. Go ahead.
Look at this.
Get on the ladder, please.
Look at this encyclopedia.
Get on the ladder.
Who has no answer?
I'm offering him my microphone. I'm offering my ladder.
Don't have
Take it.
answer for this.
Take it and get
Come
up.
on. Come on.
Okay, I'm going to ask him thrice. Once.
I don't
Please
need, I
get
don't
up on the
need-
ladder and talk.
No, I don't need.
That's number one. Once.
I don't need to
Second
be,
time.
I
Please.
don't need to be popular in
Please
cameras.
speak.
Brother. I don't need to be. I don't need.
Third time.
It's-
Please
it's you
take the
Muslim.
ladder and talk.
It's you Muslim.
Right. So,
It is very
Bismillah.
clear
Brother.
that no science has ever invented.